The administration unveiled steps on Monday to fix what it considers the long-standing unjust treatment of many nonviolent drug offenders, aiming to bypass tough mandatory prison terms while reducing America's huge prison population and saving billions of dollars.
Today, a vicious cycle of poverty, criminality, and incarceration traps too many Americans and weakens too many communities. And many aspects of our criminal justice system may actually exacerbate these problems rather than alleviate them. It's clear as we come together today that too many Americans go to too many prisons for far too long and for no truly good law enforcement reason.
Attorney General Holder said the Justice Department would direct federal prosecutors to charge defendants in certain low-level drug cases in such a way that they would not be eligible for mandatory sentences that are now on the books. But other proposals, such as giving federal judges the leeway to depart from mandatory minimum sentences for some drug offenses, require congressional approval. Holder called for the mandatory minimums he called it a moral wrong that condemns offenders to long prison terms, even for nonviolent crimes and possession of small amounts of drugs.
The bottom line is that while the aggressive enforcement of federal criminal statutes remains necessary, we cannot simply prosecute or incarcerate our way to becoming a safer nation. To be effective, federal efforts must also focus on prevention and reentry. Now, we must never stop being tough on crime, but we must also be smart and efficient when battling crime and the conditions and the individual choices that breed it.
For reaction to the Obama administration's new position, our guest via Skype is Nicole Porter from the Sentencing Project, an advocacy group for fair and effective prison reform. Nicole, thank you very much for taking some time with us. I do appreciate it. You know, if we look back at the history of this, it was, I believe, the Nixon administration that declared or coined the phrase war on drugs. Of course, it was the Ronald Reagan administration that became known for these, what some have called draconian sentences for drug offenders. That was continued by Clinton on through to this administration. So the fact that this administration, Eric Holder, Department of Justice, is calling for these reforms, what does it say about where we are on the war on drugs?
Well, I think it says that the country is moving and public opinion is moving, and it's wonderful that the administration is taking steps to help shift public opinion, because oftentimes it's been the political dynamics that's driven the war on drugs. As you highlighted, it was presidential administrations that really contributed to a shift in culture. And if the Obama administration, since the Obama administration is taking steps to change their practice and policies, it will hopefully contribute to shifting culture as well around the war on drugs.
You know, there's a talk about why this effort is a good thing, but there will be people who will believe or who will say that the Department of Justice is then letting criminals out on the street. How can we address those concerns?
Well, no one is saying, and this policy doesn't say that people won't be held accountable for their offending, but what we do know is that very low-level people convicted of very low-level offenses are oftentimes sentenced to very lengthy prison terms. And why the United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. We have 5% of the world's general population and 25% of the world's prison population. One salient factor to that is the fact that we have very lengthy prison terms. And so people convicted of low-level drug offenses sentenced to 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in federal prison, this change in practice will hopefully impact sentences for low-level offenders and help to reduce the pressure on the federal prison system and reduce cost as well. So hopefully people who are suspicious of the change in policy, who are resistant to the change in policy, will recognize that we're not saying, and that the Attorney General isn't saying, that people shouldn't be held accountable, but it's the lengthy prison terms that are the problem and have contributed to the high rate of incarceration.
The latest Bureau of Justice statistics says that there are 1.5 million people in the federal prison system. How much impact do you think these reforms will have on the prison population?
Well, we hope quite a bit. For the last 3 years, state prison populations have declined modestly, but the federal prison population has continued to increase, even though federal lawmakers and practitioners like the Attorney General have recognized that policies continue to contribute to the growth in the Bureau prison population. So it's with hope that this change in practice that the Attorney General highlighted yesterday will contribute to stabilizing and hopefully reducing the federal prison population.
And you mentioned the decrease, that we have been seeing a decrease in the state prison population. And of course, this announcement of reform is on the federal level. Should there be a commensurate effort on the state level as well?
Well, there have been changes at the state level. Again, the recent statistics highlight that for the last 3 years, there's been a modest decline in state prison populations. That's been a result of changes in policy and practice. States like California have contributed significantly to that decline. There's a current lawsuit monitoring the depopulation of the California prison system. And while the state prison population out in California has decreased significantly over the last 2 years, crime has not increased and public safety has been maintained. And in other states, there's been changes in policy as well. States like Rhode Island and New York and Michigan have relaxed their mandatory minimum penalties in recent years and are dealing differently with persons convicted of drug offenses. So it's because of the experiences in the state that we know that at the federal level, similar changes in policy can take place, reducing the reliance on incarceration and not compromising public safety.
All right, Nicole Porter from the Sentencing Project. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.